Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Yet another map analysis video for Counter-Strike. Here we are looking at CS Ivory. This map is made by Quadratic and QuotingMC. So those two gentlemen are responsible for this. We're going to take a look at the map's layout overall, starting from T-spawn. But as it is a hostage map, I guess I'll just look through the two hostage areas and then talk about how CT connects to those. Especially since the layout of this map is such that you kind of have, I want to say like there's obviously an immediate presence of a hostage right in front of the T-spawn, but then, you know, going away from that, you have another one that's further away. It's kind of more difficult to talk about the layout for this map. It's also generally more difficult to talk about the layout of this map compared to some of the other maps that we've seen before, because I don't believe that the layout is as functional. And this has nothing to do with the fact that it's a, well, I don't think it's intrinsically to do with the fact that it's a hostage rescue map as opposed to a demolition map. Maybe that had something to do with what influenced the design decisions behind it. But for my money, we are looking at a multi-varied problem with the levels. So hopefully I'm able to explain what about its characteristics are missing in that sense. Okay, I was just doing a quick test to make sure that our frame rate was acceptable in the video. Since I played in borderless windowed like a complete mongoloid, I always end up having low FPS, so when I'm recording, that is. But I recently upped it so that the video quality should be a bit better. Hopefully that is noticeable for you guys, but YouTube obviously destroys most of that anyway, so maybe it's all for naught. So anyway, let's go over the layout a little bit. Generally speaking, this is a map where there are a fair number of pathways, but the pathways themselves don't have a lot of dynamic elements to them insofar as, like, I think there's more than a few areas where once you drop down, you're making a permanent decision, unless you have a guy to boost you back up, which most of the time you're not going to have. So I'll go through generally what happens here. So the hostage right next to T-start is, I think he's always over here. Maybe there's some difference in the spawn points. I know some hostage maps have that. But as far as I know, I've always seen him over here in my few tests of this particular map. It feels like there would be more than one rotation into this particular area because of that window, but you can't even blow that window up. So the way that you can go to mid from here is by going down underneath the hostage spawn and either taking a right over there to go to the other hostage connection, or to come over here, which takes you out to long and pathway, a longer pathway up. If you go over there, you can go to middle. I think middle is probably the quickest way to go to any particular hostage case or hostage area. I guess hostage period, that's all you can say there. Whereas obviously if you want to go as T's to the, or rather as CTs to this one, you can take that long area on the right that I'll show you in a second. That's probably one of the biggest issues with the map, I think, right now, is that area, and I'll talk about that later on. Also, kind of an issue, I think, is, if you land on these, which is kind of difficult because of the clipping, it's easy to get, like, thrown off course and then fall further down. You will take some fall damage, but I guess you can land over here, and then just for some reason you're not able to step over here. Nice 2D rock, by the way, and giant seam, but you can't jump over here. And I feel like this is like, I know I've harped on about other maps, particularly, actually my first map analysis video ever was for Scarab, and that was a map where it had similar kind of chest-high things where obviously, like in every other context, even in this map, let alone in other maps, you're able to jump on top of stuff that's that same height. You just can't here because it's a wall. Like, either push this area back so that there's more playable space, or make a more convincing wall. Even if it doesn't necessarily look great from an aesthetics point of view or a logical point of view, it's going to feel better for gameplay. This is one of those areas where I feel like generally map makers end up overemphasizing what looks good to them and not caring as much about like what makes immediate sense from a logical, like a gameplay standpoint, not necessarily a logic of in-universe lore logic of like figuring out what makes sense for a constructed area. If you can balance those two, great. If you can balance them well, then that's obviously the preferred outcome. But especially when you're, if you're trying to rush to meet a deadline for a contest or something, I would hope that this gets cleaned up eventually. But yeah, this is actually the first MapCore map that I've looked through that I feel like I have a lot of criticism of the actual level design. Whereas before it's like tweaking some areas, maybe like with Anubis, I suggested removing an area or moving some stuff around with the level design. This one I think needs a lot more sweeping changes in general. So you're going to shoot this window out pretty much every round. Although I suppose it being there is an interesting design choice because you can leave all of them open and then sort of retake the hostage area once the CTs come over here and have them be a bit of a surprise if you want to. Sort of like leaving that little area by the window in Mirage B site in Market. That Market window wooden plank or whatever it is. I think it's like a shingle or something. You can leave that up there and it almost seems like, wow, nobody was here. I do that sometimes just to catch people off guard because it's one more thing that they don't expect. So something like that I could see end up being like a small style minutia play. But in general, you have... Oh, I forgot to mention, there's indeed a custom player model here. I don't know what's up. Something about this feels off, but like the tunic that he's wearing there, the shirt. I don't even know what he is. Is he a bartender? Did we take control of some hostages there in that sense? I didn't read the lore, so I have no idea. Anyway, you can either, if you're approaching this area from the T side, you can either go in that window that I just shot out, or you can take a longer route, jump over here, drop down here, and like sit over here, or I guess in a more defensible position would be deeper over here by the pool table. This area looks okay. I think it's like clean enough, although the wallpaper is kind of confusing at first. But yeah, I think it's clean cut enough. Just a matter of the approaches I feel like could use some work. I'm not really sure what the utility of some of these exterior areas are. Now this is just pure speculation, but whenever I see an area that looks like a very logical path that could be completely functional, I often think that it was at one point functional and then the developers of the map decided to close it off and this is like the last remnants of a functional pathway. This happens all the time in maps. It's not necessarily like a bad thing that it happens either, because obviously sometimes the map is better served that way. But again, it goes back to that like logic and aesthetics versus gameplay functionality and what you immediately think of when you go over here, because you do think you should be able to jump over here. There's not really any reason for you not to be able to. So that's just one of those critiques that I would levy at this particular area. 2D grass, of course, 2D brush. So I don't actually mind, in general, this whole area. I think there's some interesting gunfights that can happen. And maybe if you opened up this area and maybe put like a crate or something that I could stand on over here and you could make this some sort of like... I mean, obviously you can throw grenades over here and stuff. Oh, maybe I spoke too soon. I was thinking, yeah, you can. There's just some weird clipping over here with that tree. So you can throw grenades over there to try to get people off guard. And vice versa. Like if you're trying to pop out or something. Well, you wouldn't do it that way, but... Or that way. But you'd figure something out, some lineup, and you could throw some nades over here. You could probably line up like a pretty easy smoke as well. From over here. I don't know. Something like this. I'm sure there's some way to do it where... You can... Yeah. Do some smoke over here that slows the CTs down fairly easily. Without even popping this glass, as a matter of fact. So if you still wanted to keep that veneer up, you could. Both of these areas allow you to feed into the middle and also the CT connector to this secondary hostage site. But of course, even though there's this arrow here, you do need a boost buddy to get up here, as far as I understand. I haven't been able to find any other way to do it. So that is one of those cases where I feel like, generally speaking, I'm not 100% convinced that it makes any sense. Like, maybe if you could jump self-boost up to here and then jump over. Like, that's a situation where because you have to be so far up, depending on the angle of the rest of the geometry of the level, you could, in theory, be exposing yourself. And that could be a risky thing to do. Not quite on the level of the infamous Mirage boost into, like, from window into a ladder room. But something like that would be another layer of strategic depth and still allow you to move around the map without having to do some really long rotates. Because at the end of the day, this small case here that we're going over is exactly the same thing with that really long stretch of land that seems like almost it's supposed to be part of another map because it's so far away from everything else that I'm going to go over pretty much next after I go through mid and the CT connection. Also, the added level of, I guess, Z, the added level of height. Now we're in mid, by the way. I should slow that down a little bit. So if you're coming over here and you don't want to jump down and you don't want to pop the glass, you can take a right and you can get into middle. Middle obviously feeds into either the place where you can jump down over there that I was just complaining about not being able to self-boost in, the CT area, to your left and to your right respectively. And then you can also just take a right over here, and this is kind of the bona fide middle of the map, where CTs are going to have a much more favorable timing to get set up than to look here. You can flank them from over here. It's a more favored angle for you, but there's not really a whole lot for you to fall back to, because if you make this sort of peak, it's super aggressive, and there's nothing in here at all. So maybe there could be some cover over here, but generally speaking, I think... I think in general, it would make sense to modify this in some way, right? To make it so that there can be more interesting gunfights here. Even if you only put cover like down here or something like that. Also, my frames really get dropped when I'm moving through the water. I don't know what's up with that. But every single time you have a really long corridor and there's no, like, it's a connection to 2 different pieces of the map, or in this case, 3 different pieces of the map, but there's no cover, it's really risky to actually move through this, right? Like, even if you think to like train, you're going from T-spawn to Ivy, there's still little nooks and crannies and bits of cover you can go into. I feel like that's kind of the recipe for a strong corridor-based rotation, where it is a long, straight pathway that you connect through. Also, I don't think the frame loss is from that. I think it's from me just moving my camera. So it's a field of view thing or something. But yeah, this is basically the bona fide mid. Don't get confused by this glass. It's impenetrable. You absolutely can't do anything with it. And yeah, it's very unfortunate. Because actually, I think it could be interesting if you could maybe open this door. Oh, well, that's a very interesting door placement. Maybe if you could open that door and somehow get into this room for a sniping spot, that could be neat. Obviously, that would morph the map very heavily, and it's not a change that I've thought a whole lot about. But it is something where I think it could make some sense. Can you boost on top of this? Hello, Merrick. Oh, apparently not. Acheron agent, more like fucking idiot. Yeah, you can't boost on top of this. That's unfortunate. That could give you a really nice... what would that even afford you as far as a view goes? Something like this? Well, I guess it wouldn't really give you that much. Oh, I see what would happen. You would destroy the skybox. But in addition to that, I guess you could, in theory, see over here or something if you lowered some of this rock down. I think that could be interesting. It's obviously an area that's kind of difficult to know about if you're first coming into the map, but I feel like it could be useful. I don't know. Anyway, I do think that there should probably be more interplay within this area. Because I feel like the fact that it's like right next to T-spawn is pretty strong for T's to be able to hold this area from the get-go. But rather than make it so that this hostage is moved somewhere else or to rework the hostage area itself, I think it could be interesting to provide more options for T's to take map control in theory. But because they make those decisions, they give up immediate map control on the hostage itself, and then they have to be wary of a subterranean intrusion or a backstab or something from the CTs. In that sense, I think this map has some interesting options at both teams' disposal because of the fact that teams can decide if they want to do something like a backstab or going underneath the whole place and going over here, right? Because you kind of do both from the same thing, but you can either go lower and then go all the way around. I feel like this rotation in general is a little too ridiculous personally, but you know, you walk around all the way around here and you can, you know, have a obviously, like, as CTs, you could just do something like... that wouldn't do it, but you could figure out some smoke, I'm sure. Yeah, something like this, and then, well, a little bit deeper if possible, and then you would try to move the hostage, right? Which only counter-terrorists can do. But you could figure something out, and I'm sure it would be possible to find some lineup that would help you in that sense. Not that one. But at the end of the day, being able to go around here and you have a very safe rotation so long as you smoke that off could be really neat, especially if you coordinate that. Maybe there's like I haven't tested out the skyboxes of this map yet, so I don't actually know. But even if there was, in fact, some sort of smoke that would get you to where you needed to go, well, that's not it. That would smoke off some of these areas, which seems like it's kind of sort of close to what I was doing just now. You know, I'm sure there's some way to find some lineup that would help you out there. So there's room to play around with strategically. It just feels like in order to actually move your men around the map in an intelligent way, you have to conform to too few pathways, in my humble opinion. So now we'll get to the real big problems of the map, in my opinion, like the really big stuff. First, let's go to CT spawn. So CT spawn, you're in this lower area. You can do this obligatory boost if you want to boost up here and, you know, find your love up here. Obviously, that's like a quick boost. Somebody who's doing a late rotation down long can probably do that for you. In fact, I don't even think you need to... Whoa, I hit the Windows key. I don't even think you need... Yeah, you don't even need him to uncrouch, so that's good. But in general, I feel like that's fine, I guess. It's one of those things where it feels very similar to, like, for example, Dust 2. You know, there's like the obligatory boost to get your teammate over there faster. Okay, sure. That's fine. Not necessarily something that I can criticize. I do feel like maybe it does add a little bit of an extra significance to this particular spot because of the fact that it's right next to the rescue zone, which is sort of similar to Dust 2 having it be their boost spot be right next to a bomb site, basically on a bomb site. Unfortunately, you can't elevate your Z by jumping on that. You can jump on these trucks, though. But yeah, you just slide right off that and this. And yeah, so the CT rotation to middle is pretty quick, especially if you get the boost. It's you can take this angle, and this can be like an op duel, right? So that can be fairly exciting. You can also go this route instead and check out some tools, some power tools, and then you can either go drop, middle, or secondary hostage, however you feel like doing that. So the other thing is long, and this is probably, again, like I think it's the most problematic aspect of the entire map. It's such a long rotation. There's some utility you can use, but most importantly, it puts you at pretty much a disadvantage at all cases. Now, obviously, if the CT team is evacuating a hostage down here, and there's a T lurking over here with an op or a rifle or a scout or something, they can have a limited amount of time to pick off enemies over here. But that also means that it's limitation in this case of the CTs is that they can't really affect anything on this side of the map directly because the Ts are rarely going to push out in this particular example. They're not going to push out over here. So if this were raised up and it gave more angles for the CTs to take against Ts, who are, even if they're just like shuffling around defensives, they're not even necessarily being aggressive, all of a sudden you have a very different approach to not only this area, but you also allow CTs, well, you give Ts a reason to fight for this area, and you allow CTs to contribute, even if they're all the way over here. Now, at best, they can throw like a smoke or a flash or something. You know, find some lineup. Apparently that will land over here somewhere. So, you know, I'm sure you could find some helpful lineups or something that could smoke this off. But the idea, again, you're going to get here, even right here, you're going to get here before and throw the smoke. And by the time the smoke blooms, your teammate could be all like over here or something. You know, like he could be right down mid or down water or something like that before that even happens. So really it's, and there's probably faster lineups anyway. So I don't think that that's a reason to sort of excuse that. Or a reason to justify that, I guess. So that's like a big concern of mine is that if you, by the time you're over here, your ability to help the rest of the map is very diminished. And it doesn't have to be. Like you could make this area raised up and looking over there and have the ability for some more sniper duels and rifles and stuff to come into play, even from this position, which, especially in a broken round or a mid-round situation, could be really interesting, I think. Could be a unique characteristic of this map to have that kind of setup where sniper duels can be taken place where, like, one side, the T side, is like, of the sniper duel is pretty much in the same spot. Like they could be here or they could be here. But the CT side approach could be like from down water, or it could be mid, you know, CT mid, or it could be bridge. You know, something like that could. There's a lot of different ways that you can play around with that concept. I think just allowing CTs to contribute and thus demanding more attention from Ts I mean, I haven't play tested this map with a high skill level of individuals, but generally speaking, the meta that was developed was just waiting for them to come over here if they came here at all, and knowing that if you did spot some people over here in this long area, that the rest of the map was fairly under strength for CTs. And this goes without saying anything about the economy problems that are more or less intrinsic to the game when the CTs are the aggressors and the Ts are the defenders, and the CTs can't rely on defenders' advantage for their guns to do anything. So, like, I'll put it to you this way. Peeking an angle with an AK, peeking an angle where somebody's defending with an AK, a lot harder to get away from that, especially if they have high first bullet accuracy, than peeking an angle with an M4, where even if the first bullet accuracy is on point, they only dink you and you can have a chance to fight back. Either way, it's still not a great, it's not a most advantageous situation. But still. Nice watch, by the way. I just noticed I have a watch. That's pretty epic. But, anyway. Where was I? The only way you can engage with the rest of the map as the CT rotating down here is if you take a fight over here, which is about where the Ts are going to be by the time you get over, to this angle or so. They might be at the double gate over here, right? The collapsed gate. And just that by itself is almost like you have extra freeze time or something when you're running down here. You can't do anything until then. And again, a comparison I can already imagine people are drawing is Ivy on Train. For one, I think the rotation here is actually smaller. And for another, despite the fact that, yes, you can impact the map from this bridge area, right? And you can throw grenades and stuff, which now you can do in Ivy, at least. They did update the map to support stuff like that. I still don't think that it's as comparable, and I also don't really think that Ivy is a great calling card of Train anyway. It's certainly a characteristic of it. If you removed Ivy from Train, it would certainly not be Train anymore, and not the same kind of Train. But I don't think that's one of the reasons why the map is great. I think that's just a characteristic, a byproduct of its older design tenets, and it being quirky in that sense. Whereas this weird rotation from long on this map, for me, does not cut it. Not only, imagine you're trying to go that subterranean route that I was talking about earlier, where you're going underneath the hostage. You have to walk something like 30 seconds to get from CT spawn to the hostage. And I think it's like 15 seconds just to get here. I mean, in fact, we might as well just test that theory. So I don't know where the CTs spawned, but even if I'm generous and say that this is like a spawn that you could have, which I'm not sure it is, 35 is when we started pushing W. Let's see how many seconds it takes us just to reach about here. So that was like 6 seconds, 7 seconds. Now it's 10. Okay, so it's a little bit less than I thought. But even the fastest way to this hostage is something like... Yeah, that's like 21, 22 seconds. Assuming you have the best possible spawn, that's 20, 22 seconds to reach the hostage the fastest way. Now, I don't even want to know what it would be like if I think I was about this is 10, so 11, well, we'll say, I don't know, I'll just subtract 2 from whatever the final is. But this is a really long rotation to try to get over here. And I understand it's meant to be a stealthier rotation, but you also have to fucking walk if you don't want to make a lot of noise. So it's even longer. I don't know. I feel like there's got to be some give and take here. I feel like a lot of the interesting ideas and strategies that can be implemented in the map around the hostage areas are being held back by the fact that the approaches to those hostage areas are not cutting it. The fact that I have to walk so many seconds of just flat out movement and I can't do anything from there, until I get to that point, I can't impact the map at all. Just by virtue of the layout of the map, I feel like is a big problem. Even if you disagree with the idea that players having to walk that long is a problem, I still think that it's not great that once you get here, you still have to spend like an additional 10 seconds or so running around trying to get to the hostage in the first place. That's assuming you don't meet any resistance. The length of rotation we're talking about here is like just astronomical, and it's not even like there's interesting things to do or tasks to complete that can help your team cross that finish line while you're running around here. I mean, at best, maybe you can have an op and hold an angle like this, assuming you have a rifler, a duo buddy, holding an angle like this, waiting for them to come over. Well, I guess I said rifler, but I don't have a rifle out. But something like that, okay, maybe I can see some situation where that makes sense. That's pretty much the most interesting this can be. If both they're pushing out here, which is not advisable anyway, because the timing is not favorable for Ts to come over. Like, they're going to be there as the CTs are here. So it's not going to be super favorable for them. It's probably like 50-50, maybe a little bit in the CT favor. Either way, it's not great for the Ts. They don't necessarily want to take that peek without utility. So they would have to be pushing out here while you have an op, and a rifler is over here and waiting, you know, somebody to push out here. That's like the most interesting this can get. And that's, again, that's being like super generous to the area. I don't feel like this area is doing the map justice. Like, there are some interesting ideas. I think there's some interesting and exciting gunfights that can be taken. I'm pretty sure there's some nice utility that you can throw in, particularly assuming you can, you can break those. So as Ts, rather as CTs as the attacking team, you can throw some smokes. You can adjust some clipping. Wait, where am I? Oh, you can break this and it doesn't even do anything. Well, that's unfortunate. How do you throw utility over here? Wait, where does that even lead? There's not even anything over here, I guess. That's a window into nothing. A window into the abyss. A window into a broken skybox. Yeah, so you can't even really make use of that then, I guess. So what? In order to throw utility, you would actually have to be over here. So I guess that's real. Like, you have to come over here. Oh. You can't even pull these up from there because of the clipping. So what can you do from over here then? Like, not being facetious. I mean, seriously. Wait, what? You may be joking me. Yeah, you may be pranking me with this one, man. So, yeah, I don't know about that one. I feel like there needs to be a lot more attention paid to how this area of the map can affect the rest of the map. That's sort of the broader point that I'm trying to make here. So not only do we have this where I feel like if you raised this up, for one, whoever gets to here first is generally going to have an advantage because aiming up is a little bit harder than aiming down. Although, I mean, I guess they're both kind of difficult, but assuming you're already in here and you're like raised up, you know, you have a bit of a vantage point, a bit of a warning sign as to when the enemy comes over here. So the rotations are kind of even right now, I think, as far as who gets here first. We can test that again with like most generous spawn, 35. Hey, 35 was last time too. So yeah, like in order to get up here, it's about 5-6 seconds. And then for T's, let's see. I think the T spawn is actually much longer. We'll see. So we'll say 20. Yeah. Yeah, T-spawn is definitely much longer. So, I mean, the CTs already have a reason to come over here. But in that sense, in terms of the fact that this is like a rotation that they can win. Although I think there is a faster way over here. I guess it would be something like this. It's 59 when I started. Well, you don't want to do that because you'll break your legs. Yeah, so this is only a 10-second or so rotation. About 7-8 seconds if you handle yourself properly. You can jump off over here and onto these logs. That might slow you down actually a little bit. So it will say 10 seconds. You're still, you know, walking into enemy territory at that point. I think for one, making this a little bit more even so that it takes the CTs maybe 7 seconds instead of 5 to get into a position where they can actually shoot over here, but then allowing them more options once they do get into position and take control, like making this an area to be worth fighting over. Really, it's only worth it as a rotation from T's once a hostage is rescued. But if you never let the CTs rescue a hostage, you'll never really have to worry about that. And that's where the problem becomes, is like it's almost a different map. Like you almost never want to go there unless it's like niche scenarios, right? You never really have to worry about backstab from there, because it's not like as soon as the CTs get control over this area, they can immediately backstab you. You can have one guy holding up here and it's super easy for him to just rotate over here to help if there's a call for help. And then, this obviously links up mid and that area. So somebody's always going to be holding over here. So you're going to have like two people, one of them sitting here, one of them sitting here. And, Opper can be back, I guess, or, wherever you want to arrange the teams. The line of scrimmage almost doesn't even matter at that point, because as long as you have like two people here and the other three can go somewhere else, there's no way for the CTs to get here without risking getting shot at, right? Like, if they come over here from that long area, they're going to get shot at from the guy upper, or the guy could be holding in the lower areas. Either way, he's going to be able to spot them, right? So he could be doing something like this. And even if he gets found out, he can just back off and then run over here and run up the stairs. Or even better, he can run all the way around here and now hold from the hostage spot into this area, which is where they would gain access to if they went up the stairs. So, yeah, he's going to take longer to get there than the CTs do to get up the stairs, maybe. But again, by that point, like, presumably this guy's already on alert. I don't know. Like, you're basically telling CTs, fuck you, hit headshots. And instead of, like, giving them an opportunity to take map control. And then giving the Ts, like, there's something that the Ts actually lose out on. Right now, I feel like they don't lose anything if they lose control of this or never gain control of it in the first place. I feel like the CTs are the ones to benefit in that sense. So, I mean, that's pretty much all my thoughts are on this map right now. It definitely seems like there's areas of the map, particularly that long area, that don't have enough impact on the rest of the map. And so because of that, CTs don't have a lot of motivation to go there, and Ts don't have a lot of motivation to fight over that area. When you don't have enough motivation for either team to fight over the area, basically you really only need to give one team the motivation to fight for it, because then the other team's motivation is whatever they want to get, they can't have. Because we're going to get sniped from there, or they're going to give too much map control. I mean, with Ivory, I'm rather comparing Ivy on train to long on Ivory. Wow, that's confusing. The corollary I keep bringing up is Ivy on train, and when you take Ivy control, you can go to either bomb site. In this case, yes, in theory, you can go to the other hostage sites, and you actually have 3 rotation spots instead of 2, right? You can go to the left and upper, to the left and lower, or to the right. And I guess by that metric, you can even count to the right to mid or to the right to upper, whatever one you want. But in this particular case, I do feel like it's much more of a tall order for the CTs to take control of this area and then take more control based on that area, instead of taking control of this area and then immediately being able to execute based on that. The positioning and the layout of the map as a result of this area and just the area that long immediately feeds out to on the T side, it doesn't allow CTs to take that kind of control. And of course, there's like a lot of clipping stuff over here that we were trying to mess around with, which means it's even harder for the CTs to use this area wisely, even with utility. Forget about trying to peek over and actually win gunfights from presumably disadvantageous positions where they're giving sound cues away, or they're like aiming up at weird angles that are going to take a long time for them to learn. And that's one of those things where the angles are simply not intuitive. And yes, you can adjust your Z over here, which is neat. Kind of reminds me of Italy, actually, another hostage map. The left side of that map, well, from the CT's perspective, the left side, by the leftmost hostage guide. So, like, that could be an interesting corollary as well. I don't know what you did to that staircase, but it's not happy. And, yeah, that's Pythagoras math class. Anyway, at the end of the day, I feel like this map definitely needs a lot of work. As far as the level design goes, I didn't comment too much on the visuals. I feel like source, grass, and trees always look like shit, man. I don't know what happened here. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's the engine, maybe it's not, but I haven't seen a good grass or tree jungle-based map ever. I still can't believe that Jungle-Fi map, what is that one? The Danger Zone map? I can't believe that got accepted. I mean, obviously, I don't know about its functionality in terms of how, what the gameplay is, but just visually looking at it, it's another kind of thing like this. Like, I'm very, very surprised that Valve ended up taking that in. So, not a fan of the visuals, but even beyond that, like, I'm much more, like I said in the previous one for Basalt or Basalt, however you pronounce that. I'm pretty sure it's Basalt. I was talking about how I don't care that much for visuals, more focused on gameplay. In this particular case, the gameplay definitely needs some changes. I think the layout in general definitely needs some changes. So I hope that the video is useful for the developers or even for other people who are just interested in what I have to say about this particular map, I guess. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll be back later for some more, so stay tuned. Mwah.